In the hospital, when I saw my grandmother on the sickbed, I rushed over and burst into tears. Mrs. Butler grabbed me and told me that my grandmother was about to go into the operating room and everything would be fine. She would take care of everything and asked me not to worry. I stayed in the hospital for a week. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Fortunately, my grandmother's surgery was very successful. And she recovered well after the operation. As long as she stayed for another half-month, she could go home. Mrs. Butler also promised that during my stay at the villa, she would not send my grandmother back to my parents, but would have her stay in a house under her name and arrange for someone to take care of her. Mrs. Butler is like an angel to me. I cried and asked Mrs. Butler how I could repay her. Mrs. Butler touched my head. April, you are the daughter-in-law I carefully selected. If Justin wakes up, you will be the true daughter-in-law of the Butler family. Now that Justin is in this situation, I won't hold you back. As long as you give birth to Justin's child, you can leave with the money and start a new life with someone else. I hugged Mrs. Butler tightly. I don't want to leave, and I don't want to find another man. As long as you and Justin don't mind me, even if he is in a vegetative state, I want to be with him for the rest of my life. Mrs. Butler smiled with satisfaction. My judgment was indeed correct. You are a good girl, but you are still young, it's too early to say these things. After you give birth to the child, whether to leave or stay, you can decide for yourself. Half a month later, my grandmother was discharged from the hospital. Mrs. Butler had made all the arrangements for my grandmother as she had promised. I felt relieved and returned to the large villa. It had been more than 20 days since I last saw Justin, and every day I felt an emptiness in my heart. When I returned home, for some reason, at first glance, I felt that Justin had become thinner. Could it be that he missed me and lost weight while I was away? I shook my head, mocking my own wild thoughts. Justin was in a vegetative state, he had no awareness. Maybe he didn't even know he had a wife. But I couldn't control myself and threw myself into his arms. Even if he had no consciousness, I still told Justin bit by bit about my worries, fears, joys, and happiness during the past 20 days. Only in his arms, smelling his familiar scent, did I feel at ease. I held Justin and snuggled up to him. Justin, I miss you so much, there are so many things I want to tell you. Do you know that I like you? I don't know why, but I unexpectedly fell in love with a vegetative person. Even without money, I am willing to have a child with you. Am I sick? How could I develop feelings for a vegetative person? Justin, please wake up, I really want you to wake up. I kept whispering in Justin's ear until I fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I had another dream. I dreamt that someone was hugging me tightly, and hot tears fell onto my face. When I woke up in the morning, everything was back to normal. I stared at Justin and always felt that last night was not a dream, nor was it my imagination. But no matter how I stared, Justin still looked like a vegetative person. I smiled disappointedly, perhaps I had lost my mind. And it was my longing for Justin to wake up that made me have thoughts and dreams day and night. Just as Justin and I were sleeping together every night, unable to cross the final hurdle, Mrs. Butler fell ill. I went to the hospital to see Mrs. Butler. A loose hospital gown was draped over her body, and it was then that I noticed that Mrs. Butler, who had always exuded a strong aura of dominance, had actually aged and had white hair. My heart suddenly felt a little sour. Mrs. Butler gestured for me to sit beside her. April, I'm getting old and my health is not good. Since Justin became a vegetable a year ago, I have been forcibly holding on. If I can't hold on anymore, you should come to the company and help me. I buried my head in Mrs. Butler's waist, finally experiencing the maternal love I had never received since I was young. No, Justin hasn't woken up yet. You can't give up. You will live a long and healthy life. Mrs. Butler touched my head. I know my own body. The only regret is that I couldn't leave a descendant for the Butler family. Even if I go down, I won't have the face to meet Justin's father. April, have a child with Justin for me. I'm begging you, I'll give you anything you want. Mrs. Butler's tears fell onto my face, scorching my heart. I choked up. Justin will definitely have children. You will definitely meet your grandson. In that moment, I made a decision in my heart. When I returned to the villa that day, I closed the curtains and lay down beside Justin. Justin, Mrs. Butler's health is deteriorating. She wants to see a descendant of the Butler family. I have to fulfill the contract. You won't mind, will you? Knowing that Justin couldn't hear, I still explained to him. Perhaps it was the ambience lighting, his ears turned red, and his whole body was enveloped in a blush. I kissed along the corners of his eyes and eyebrows, to his nose and thin lips. What's going on? His face seems even redder now. I seemed to hear a faint gasp in my ear. I looked up, but Justin still had his eyes closed and didn't move. Was it just an illusion? After it was done, I lay in his embrace, feeling satisfied and let out a sigh of relief. Strangely, it seemed like I saw a hint of a smile on his face. I reached out and pinched his cheek. Please wake up soon. If you wake up, I don't mind fulfilling the contract again. When Mrs. Butler came to see me again, she clearly felt the change in me. April, have you too become? I shyly nodded. Mrs. Butler hesitated a bit. Justin, is he okay? My face instantly turned red. Didn't she see my flushed face, my weak waist, and my almost immobile legs? Seeing my reaction, Mrs. Butler instantly became happy. That's good. I was worried that Justin would be affected by being bedridden for a long time. Then you should speed up the process. I wish you have baby as soon as possible. Mrs. Butler became excited, completely devoid of her usual dominant demeanor. Watching Mrs. Butler suddenly become so energetic, I doubted whether her previous illness was just an act to urge me to take action quickly. Oh, by the way, today is Valentine's Day, a holiday for you young people. I gave the security and nanny a day off, and tonight the entire villa is completely yours and Justin's. Wish you both a fun night. Afraid that I would expose her act of pretending to be ill, Mrs. Butler said this sentence and quickly ran off, leaving behind a big bag. I opened the bag, and my eyes widened instantly. There were all kinds of toys inside. Thinking about Mrs. Butler's parting words of having fun, I could only feel my face turning red. I went upstairs to the bedroom with a bag in my arms and took out the toys one by one to show them to Justin. Justin, do you like this set or that set? Or maybe, do you like this? I had a mischievous thought and held handcuffs in front of Justin. I don't know why, but I felt like Justin raised an eyebrow. I couldn't contain my excitement. Justin, I'm really looking forward to tonight. Finally, it was evening and only Justin and I were left in the entire villa. I carefully arranged everything, and just as I was getting excited, suddenly, someone grabbed me from behind and made me unable to move. I screamed and turned my head, only to find Teddy Stone. He had been pursuing me since college and continued to chase after me even after graduation. But I felt that he had ill intentions, so I never accepted him. I didn't expect that he would find out where I was. And tonight, when the villa was empty, he sneaked in from the big tree outside, climbed to the second-floor window, and entered. April Fox, tonight there's no one in the villa and we're in the suburbs. Even if you scream your lungs out, no one will come to save you. He looked at me with a malicious gaze. Teddy Stone, what you're doing is illegal. Mrs. Butler won't let you get away with this. I shouted. Teddy was very strong. He held me with one hand and picked up the handcuffs with the other, handcuffing my hands to the table. I pursued you for 5 years, but you never agreed. But then, you sold yourself to a vegetable for money. April Fox, since you like to play so much, I'll play with you. Teddy Stone pressed me against the table and gagged me with a cloth. You know, wouldn't it be more exciting to do this in front of your vegetable husband? What a pervert! I couldn't move, tears streaming down my face. I turned my head and looked at Justin. I knew I couldn't escape, I just hoped that Teddy Stone wouldn't harm Justin. At this moment, I felt extremely fortunate that Justin was a vegetable and unaware, unable to see all of this, otherwise, it would break my heart. He kissed me recklessly on my face. I closed my eyes and silently prayed, Justin, please don't look, please don't listen, please don't have any awareness. No one noticed that Justin on the bed had an iron-black expression on his face, and his fingers were trembling with force. I thought to myself, it's really over now. The next second, there was a loud bang as a vase smashed onto Teddy's head. He didn't have time to react and was hit, blood pouring from his head, and he fainted. Behind Teddy, Justin Butler, who had miraculously awakened, stood there. I didn't expect that Justin, who had been in a vegetative state for a year, who the doctors said would never wake up again, would wake up at this critical moment to protect me. Justin Butler. My legs went weak and I burst into tears. Justin quickly came forward and caught me. April, I'm sorry, I didn't protect you. I hugged him and cried. How did you wake up? I thought you would never wake up again. Justin held me in his arms. I'm sorry, April, it's all my fault. I should have woken up earlier. It's all my fault. He untied me, tied up Teddy, and then made a call to the police. Mrs. Butler came with the police together. And when she saw Justin awake, she hugged Justin tightly and cried uncontrollably. The originally beautiful Valentine's night ended up in chaos and turmoil. Because of Justin's awakening, Mrs. Butler and I were as happy as if it were Thanksgiving Day. Mrs. Butler took my hand and said, April, I felt a connection with you the first time I saw you. You are the one who will become my daughter-in-law. Indeed, even the doctor said that Justin wouldn't wake up, but he did because of you. April, I am truly grateful to you. Love can create miracles. I blushed and shyly tugged at Justin's clothes, whispering, And what about you? How will you thank me? Justin replied, Haven't I already thanked you? What? Justin held my hand and said, Didn't I give myself to you? I blushed even harder. After Mrs. Butler left, I cornered Justin against the wall. Tell me, did you have any consciousness during your coma? Could you hear and see everything? Justin chuckled softly. I was conscious the whole time and I could hear, but sometimes I could open my eyes and sometimes I couldn't. According to Justin, he was conscious throughout his vegetative state, but he couldn't move. His consciousness felt trapped somewhere and occasionally came out, but he couldn't control the timing. And every night, as I held Justin, I shared my past, poured out my heart, and shared my happiness, everything. He heard it all. At first, he only thought of me as a tool brought by Mrs. Butler to carry on the family line, and he had no favorable impression of me. But as time went on and he got to know everything about me, Justin also fell in love with me and couldn't live without me. He heard my pleas in his ear, begging him to wake up. But he was powerless and could only shed a tear when he occasionally woke up in the middle of the night. After listening to Justin's story, my heart ached. Being conscious but unable to move, Justin must have had a very difficult time during this period. Suddenly, I thought of a crucial question. Could you feel and hear everything I said and did before? Justin raised his finger and gently touched my chin. What do you think? Help, can I escape overnight? Thinking back to the things I did recklessly in front of Justin, I felt like dying. Sensing my intention to escape, Justin grabbed me. Who said that if I could wake up, she would fulfill the contract again? I begged for mercy, I take it back. Justin held me tightly. It's too late. After an intense exercise, the two of us lay side by side on the bed, exhausted. Justin asked if I was satisfied with him. I nodded, just like the man in the video. Justin tapped my head, no more watching those random videos in the future. In my heart, I silently complained that it was his own mother who did that. In the following days, Justin and I went to visit Grandma together. Grandma's health had recovered very well, and she was very satisfied with Justin. The more she saw him, the more she liked him, to the point where even I, her granddaughter, had to step aside. I pretended to be jealous and said, Grandma, you can't be so biased. I'm your granddaughter. Mrs. Butler hugged me and said, It's okay. Grandma is biased towards Justin, but I'm biased towards you. After leaving the hospital, Justin held my hand and asked, April, the agreement between you and my mom was $1 million for one child. If you get $1 million in the future, would you still leave? I proudly straightened my chest. No way, I once swore that I wouldn't give up until I get $3 million. Justin smiled, I am yours, so am I not worth $3 million? I glanced at Justin. With his physique, his looks, his skills, I indeed didn't lose out. Justin's eyes darkened, and he pulled me into the car, quickly driving us home. Justin, slow down. What are you doing? Are you sure you want me to slow down? I'm afraid someone can't wait. We arrived home, turned off the car, and went upstairs in one smooth motion. But you haven't proposed to me yet. My mouth was suddenly sealed. You can't escape, my Mrs. Butler. Justin, we haven't. Call me honey. Honey, I blushed and felt shy. Fireworks filled the sky, and in Justin's eyes, I saw stars falling to earth.